The future for me is, as I say in my book, an age of thrivability, an era in which enough of us are aware of our participation in life's core patterns that we can cultivate the fertile conditions for life to thrive at every level, for us as individuals, for the collectives that we form together, organizations and communities, and for the biosphere.
We are on an adventure to unite the stories and solutions of the pioneers, creating a better future for all. Together, we will journey to every continent, every country and community, and ask the question, what is the future you dream of? We will explore the blockers to us getting there, and we will ask, what will it take? What do we need? What do you need to create a future where we all thrive in balance and harmony with nature and each other? In this episode, we welcome Thrivability Maven and author of Age of Thrivability, Michelle Holliday. What a wonderful woman. It was such a pleasure to connect and co-create with Michelle. The focus of Michelle's work is helping people shift from a mechanistic, reductive, extractive worldview to a regenerative, heart-centered one. Together, we adventure through how our worldview needs to bring nature to the heart of it, how feelings and the words we choose will guide us in the world we co-create, and we explore some of the ways that Michelle is co-creating a future we can all love. We talk through how Michelle has supported farmers to transition how they relate to the land, and how tourism organizations can shift how they see their role in communities and the land they bring people to. We also touch on constellations or clusters of connections within organizations and the power of trust in our collaborative relationships, and so much more. You can read the action takeaways from this episode, comment, co-create future episodes, and connect with fellow changemakers in the Future Planet community of action by visiting futureplanet.love to sign in or sign up. Let's get into it. It's a pleasure today to welcome Michelle Holliday, a Thrivability Maven. I think you would perhaps say that you're yourself, and an author of Age of Thrivability. I loved the piece that you wrote about talking about humanity being at a fork in the road, and it really resonated because this is about choosing. I don't know which color it is, but choosing the multicolored version of the future and what that future we would all love. But I love that you summed it up as a path which had wisdom, compassion, and thriving within it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your vision for the future and maybe some of your thoughts. And I also am really curious to explore your concepts around living systems. And for a long time, I've felt and thought organizations can just change, right? Like they're just a group of people that have decided on what they feel like they should be doing, and actually they can undecide or redecide. So I'm so excited to listen, because many of our listeners are in organizations and thinking about how to make change happen, or in systems and thinking about how to make change happen. So it feels like your wisdom is going to be hugely welcomed by them. Thank you for joining. Maybe you'd like to do an introduction of yourself, because it feels like you know yourself, I hope, well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carl. That's wonderful. So I'm a consultant and facilitator, a researcher. I'm a researcher most of all. I'm in it for curiosity and learning. But I do love to share what I discover, and I need to be in learning with others. I can't figure things out on my own. And so I consult and I teach and I facilitate selfishly so that I can learn more. And I write a lot. I wrote a book. I've written almost 100 articles, blog posts, and other forms of writing about themes of thrivability and regeneration. So that work in the world shows up in a few ways. One is working directly with organizations. Another is working with sectors, and I do that more and more. So I work with farmers. I work in the transition from industrial methods of agriculture to regenerative methods, more life-aligned methods. And the reason that that's sector level work is that farmers are discovering that even though the science of that transition is pretty clear and the methods are just a handful, that it's a shift in worldview. It's a shift in story about how we relate to the land and how we relate to each other in community. And they need each other, and they need some support, some facilitation and guidance. And so that's where I come in, and we learn from soil. We ask, what would soil do? What would the living system that is soil do? And how can we bring that into our work as community? I work also in tourism, working with national and regional tourism organizations to help them shift from seeing their role as managing the tourist destination, this very mechanistic and reductionist, controlling understanding, to seeing their role as cultivating the hosting community. So if tourism wants to be, those in tourism want to be regenerative somehow, then we have to ask, what needs regeneration? What needs to be regenerative and regenerated? And it is people and place, and that's not the job of the tourist. It's the job of the people in that place to come together somehow as a community and figure out what is the healing and wisdom that are needed here. So that's where I come in as a facilitator and bringing living systems principles and a different story.
And a different story. Yeah, just the very word tourist sort of feels really incorrect. As soon as you share it in those ways, I'm like, oh, okay. No.
Right. You show up with your demands, and your demands are the only ones that matter, and it's very extractive. It ends up doing harm.
And observational and intrusive and distance and separate and disconnected. Those things all sort of feel like, yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talked about how many organizations want to change, and we've decided to do things a certain way. Couldn't we undecide that? Couldn't we decide to do things a different way? It makes me think of this saying that where there's a will, there's a way, right? So why don't we just change? But I think there's another element. I think there's also worldview, that when we are immersed within a worldview that says we are separate from each other and from nature, and that the goal is to extract for yourself and not in collaboration, then it's hard to see other possibilities. It's like really hard to imagine other ways of being. And so we have to be in conversations and experiences about that help us see the world in a different way. So that's the focus of my work, helping people shift from a mechanistic, reductionist, extractive worldview, the one that brought us patriarchy and white supremacy and ecocide, to one that helps us see we are participating in life and that we can act in ways that are more thrivable, more in alignment with life.
I love that. I feel also, I think even with that, right? So it's not just seeing, it's feeling. And I feel that feeling is like, that's almost in some ways the missing link, because when we think with our heads, somewhat we make some change, but actually when we feel, then we had it recently. So it's been arriving more frequently, this sort of sense of all over, that's called tingles, but like this sort of feeling of like, as we reach alignment, one receives this whole all body, like you can feel it's very much, it's like a deepening of connection. There's a sort of like, and for what you're sharing, as we then have that deeper sense of feeling within ourselves and have a greater sense of connection perhaps with each other, or what we're hoping, I suspect, what we're hoping for is that connection to what's around us, whether it's animals or nature. So we feel that connection in a deeper way.
Yes, I love you're going exactly right to the heart of things. You're talking about the heart, but yeah, that's it. That as we recognize life and the complexity of life and our participation in it, then more sources of knowing, more sources of knowledge become valid. So those feelings that we sense in our bodies and our emotions, those are valid sources of information. When there's more complexity than the intellect can process, the information still comes, but it comes in the form of intuition and a tingling, as you said, and we can pay attention to those and check, are you feeling it too? Or what do we want to do about that? How can we follow that?
Yeah, but it feels so edged to like in a for example, in a corporate environment, to say you're giving me tingles, like you've got to justify having a partner or not. There's so many things you've got to say there to create safety in that environment. Often, I find, and maybe even you wouldn't even share. You wouldn't even feel safe. You wouldn't feel.
For
Maybe
sure.
you wouldn't feel safe to share, right? That you felt
No.
that. That's what we're. So one of the things that we're really curious about is creating a sense of safety around being able to share in that way.
Yeah.
And then if more and more of us do it, then it feels like it's becoming more normal. Because you mentioned these blockers, and I'm really, really excited to explore, I guess, the vision. So let's not remove ourselves from going to that vision of what you feel like that vision is. But I think on the blockers, so when you were talking about that, like there was really resonant around this distancing that's happened between us and the earth. And a lot of it's historic, isn't it? It's like, in many ways, religion creates this distance. Certainly Christianity and other, you either descend or you ascend. And so you're never really present. You're never really here. And then I was doing a family constellation with my partner last week. And what arose was someone exploring their near past. So 2 or 3 ancestors deep. And the feeling that after World War II, everyone had to be very buttoned down with their feelings and not share and just be very stoic and get on. And then the impact that then has on generation after generation of this, just accepted that we wouldn't talk about, why would we talk about our feelings? That means we've got to feel stuff, right? It just feels like these really, they're very interesting blockers, this sort of,
Yeah. I love it. I love that you did a family constellation. This is another way of knowing, another way of tuning in. And there's a range of ways. I have this graphic image I can share with you. It's kind of a collection of icons in a circle, and they are different ways to be in the practice of stewardship. And I think of stewardship as the combination of reverence and responsibility, reverence for the complexity that is more than we can possibly comprehend. And certainly, and the potential that's more than we can control or manage. And yet we feel called to respond, to be responsible for the needs of a living system. So to be in that reverence and responsibility, we have to know, we have to be able to tune in and sense what are the needs. And there are many different ways. Things like methods like family constellation, systemic constellation work are so powerful. Spending time in nature and in silence, in ritual, also being in generative conversation, which seems maybe safe, but a really well-designed conversation that draws on collective intelligence can also surface those things. Being creative in some way, and you get that spark of inspiration. We don't have to dig deeply into where did it come from, but there are different ways that different people will be comfortable with, but it all gets to what you're pointing to, the tingle.
Yeah. No, that really resonates. We've gone on a journey of convening. So I really love the R words that you used. May you say them again?
Reverence and responsibility.
Yeah, nice. Really like this. I would add relevance to that as well, which we've discovered over time. Like
Very
how,
nice.
like specifically in, I guess, constellations or clusters of connection within organizations. So how relevant we are to, and relevance can change. It can be a whole different thing depending on what you're exploring. But so we've learned over time that small circles of people in connection, sharing deeply with good questions and sort of, we have this sort of feeling of decompressing. So you can't just dive deep. You have to sort of go down through layers. But so those small circles can be tremendously transformational actually for building a sense of safety and connection, that from there you can start to be authentic about the challenges you face, and then start to be open about how to collaborate, but only once you've gone through those layers of almost just feeling open and really being honest and authentic. Yeah.
That's it. It takes time to regain or for the first time discover trust in each other, trust in yourself, trust in life. That seems to be what we're after there.
That's interesting, the trust thing, isn't it? It's such a, I don't want to call it this, but I feel like but maybe okay. In sales, which is a really sales is effectively building relationships. And I think it's Stephen Covey that talks about speed of trust or something. But really what's happening there is it's about how quickly I feel like I fall into trust with someone is determinant of how well I can work with that person or do something with that person. That sort of trust that you can be safe and share. Yeah. Okay, so we're arriving at a point where we're like enjoying creating, but also I really feel like anchoring us in perhaps the conversation. There is an intention around having a structure to these. It's really much about looking at that future, looking at those blockers very clearly, and then looking at what the solutions are, but then also calling in what we need to see that world that we desire being brought into reality. And each person's got a different part of that puzzle. So my intention is that if we create a patchwork of conversations, that we arrive with a patchwork of solutions, and through that, people can find and discover the path to that future as well. So what would what is that future that we would all love? What does that feel like for you? What does that look like for you? What is that experience for you? But also, what's that experience for other people, everyone else as well?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. The future for me is, as I say in my book, an age of thrivability, an era in which enough of us are aware of our participation in life's core patterns that we can cultivate the fertile conditions for life to thrive at every level, for us as individuals, for the collectives that we form together, organizations and communities, and for the biosphere, that we are in what I talk about as the informed intention and practice of enabling life to thrive. Informed because we know here's how life works. We're aware that that's what we're cultivating, and intention, because it's currently not the intention for most of us, most of the time, in most contexts, to enable life to thrive. We set our sights on something less than that, and we're getting something catastrophically less than life thriving. So more people being more clear, whatever we're doing, whatever our product or service or our excuse for getting together, enabling life to thrive has to be at the heart. Let's use every project, every organization as a practice ground for getting better at that and contributing more thriving. So informed intention and practice, this is an ongoing individual and collective life practice to be in stewardship, to be in the practice of stewardship, ever deepening in wisdom and compassion and the ability to sense what's needed to be relevant, as you said, and to respond with effective action. So our organizations, our political spheres would all, is that face because of politics or?
No, it's because my WhatsApp went ping.
Oh no. So I didn't hear it. But the vision is that every sphere of our lives, our organizations, the political realm, our families become those practice grounds and are transformed. The conversations we have are transformed so that we're asking bigger and bolder questions. We're coming in with far more care, and some of the actions will be the same, but many will be quite transformed.
I just want to sit with that for a bit because it's a lot to unpack as well in that. I love arriving backwards because it's the last thing that you share. I love the process of asking better questions. Mm-hmm. I think I'm really curious about that. What arrives for me though is to understand. There's two elements that arrive for me that I think would be interesting to unpack. One is, what does to thrive mean? And but I really love. I also notice and really love. You mentioned biosphere. I think we've become completely detached from our role in the web of animals. Or I can't remember exactly what it's called. But so I think that like our role has typically been sort of apex predator, and that's awful in a way. There hasn't been that sort of like cultivation. Even perhaps predominantly the cultivation has been mostly to sort of eat it, I suppose, or use it, right? And so I love that idea of being more present and more aware within the ecosystem that we're within. That feels challenging, though. I mean, I went to the UAE the other day, which is was a very complicated experience, and there was so much distance between nature and everything that was built. But the more concrete that we build, the more glass we build, the more metal we build, the more roads we build, the more cars we go in, the much less likely we were going to be able to even approach feeling and thinking like we're in that ecosystem. So that feels like a huge blocker. Anyway, so I've digressed now. But actually, I haven't digressed. I'm painting a larger picture. So I'm interested to explore what thriving means. But I'm also, I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way, but I'm going to say it. Like, is thrivability, or how would thrivability be achievable for everyone? Because as I'm listening to that, I'm thinking, well, what does that mean for different people? Is it different for different people? And should we be thinking about it from the perspective of even a person? And we're starting now. Well, we're not starting. We at Future Planet, we have an ecosystem perspective. So we don't think about sectors. We think about the natural ecosystems and then how we connect in with that. And so the first question is, what is thrivability? What does it mean for people? But also, what does it mean for different people? And how does it include everyone? And I will draw a very clear line. So, for example, if we think about, people that are perhaps most affected by climate change through the equator and will have to move, like, what does it mean? What does that mean for them? And that would be an interesting topic to also explore, I feel, as well.
Sure. I have two ways of defining thriving. Well, one is thriving and one is thrivability. Thriving, and it's got 6 or 7 elements to it, and I won't remember all of them, but it's something about generating more possibility and drawing on the unique potential that you or whatever the living system is that you have, and growing ever more in harmony and in becoming ever more at home and in harmony with context. That seems really important.
I love at home and in harmony. That's
right.
A beautiful couplet. Yeah, that's so lovely. And actually, as you were sharing that, I'm thinking, oh, sorry, you want to go? You go.
It's core to thriving, and we often ignore that part of what it means to thrive, that we think we're in some bubble and that we can thrive alone, but it requires us to be ever more at home and in harmony with context.
Yeah. So then if we think of ourselves as being interconnected, then we all have responsibility to each other to help each other feel like we are at home and in harmony.
Right. And we are each context for each other.
So in that if we feel and think like that, then it's unacceptable that people would not be supported to be able to feel like that themselves.
Right. There are all kinds of wonderful wisdom quotes from others about how we can't really be free if others aren't. My liberation is bound up in yours. There's a twist on a quote by Aldo Leopold, who was an environmentalist early in the U.S. environmental movement. And my twist on his statement is that a thing is thrivable if it tends to enhance the integrity, beauty, and regenerative capacity of the living community it touches. So there's a tendency. It's not you are thriving or you are not in this moment, but are we growing in our ability, in our tendency to enhance beauty, integrity, and the regenerative, the healing and generative capacity of ourselves and that context that we're part of? So there's a lot to take in that too, I think.
No, I just wanted you to say those words again because they felt good to receive the first time, and they felt like they deserved a second bow, as if they were on stage. What's stopping more people feeling this or knowing this?
I think it comes down to, first, worldview, the dominant story that tells us that's not valid, that's not important, that we are separate from each other, separate from nature, separate from context. We exist to compete and consume, that speed and scale are the only effective ways to get to productivity and profitability, and those are the only goals that really matter. So there's that story, that worldview, and then a whole society structured around that story. So it's very hard to break free of it. But we are breaking free, and the living systems that we're part of are kind of pushing that along. So the pandemic and the climate crisis are forcing people to wake up to our interconnectedness, interdependence, forcing people to adopt a living systems understanding of the world. So as much as it's terrible and traumatic, it's also been so helpful. There, in the last 3 years, the number of people, the number of conversations that I'm seeing, I'm part of, it has grown exponentially around these topics. So it's happening. The shift is coming, and we're restructuring society. Ownership of organizations and of land is shifting, and whose voices matter, what methods we use to discern the best actions. There are lots and lots of signs of positive change.
That feels really true. Yeah, I sense that and noticed that as well. I mean, we're having a conversation. We're doing what we do. You know, I've noticed a big shift in the last, 2 years maybe. And I would say that I'm not the wisest owl in this movement. There's people that have been going for longer than me. But so it wouldn't be the first time we've noticed a shift, but there's been a dramatic shift and a dramatic curiosity and a dramatic change in the way that people are wanting to be in the world. And you can notice that from content on social media, or the number of different people that are writing or doing different things in the space. That definitely feels true. I also feel it's like an immovable force against an immovable object. Is that what it's called?
Something
so
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's exactly, but it's something like this. And so I'm very curious around, how does that breakthrough moment happen? Like, what would be that pathway to facilitating or speeding up? I know that we don't like speed and scale, but actually speed and scale of this would be really rather good, right? So how do we get there? Like, what does that look like, and how does that happen?
Yeah. My best strategy at the moment is propagation more than scaling. That and maybe there are ways to scale. Certainly there are leading voices that reach the masses. I think for that story to really take root, it's kind of one circle at a time. And it's something that has to be lived. So it's more like dandelions.
And that's slower, but over time more resilient as a way of growing. It's sort of got this interconnected resilience. Yeah, we that feels really resonant, being asked to ask more questions rather than statements. But I feel like this might help bring us to the some of the things that you write about around around organizational systems, and perhaps there's stuff there. So I think, yeah, this feels interesting to explore. Or certainly something we've noticed. So we noticed like large events, for example, or large gatherings of groups of people that maybe feel like if we look at an event or a moment in time as an opportunity for people to change or move or learn or find out something or connect with each other. And we look at this desire for more size or more scale or more something like this. then those ways don't work so well. You end up in a big space feeling slightly disconnected, not quite sure what you're doing there. And there's multiple examples of ways that might be the case. Whereas small groups, and I love what you're saying about small groups of people with intention joining up. And I'm very curious about how to do two things. One is those small intentional groups, but at the same time, a level of coordinated connection between other. So you mentioned propagation, and I loved that word. It's sort of like, so we think about clusters and connection between clusters. And if we look at most of there are challenges around feeling, being, sensing how we are and how we show up in the world. But there are also a fundamentally large amount of challenges that are to do with how we receive what we receive. So books, clothes, food, cars, all these different elements. And in that circumstance, then it's about organizational structure, and it's about the challenges, the very granular challenges that are faced, decarbonization, regeneration, and how, for example, a supermarket or a food producer connects into the living system through farmers, for example. And then in those clusters, what we're finding is it's very much about sharing and having a space to share knowledge and share solutions and share ideas in small groups. But it's also very important that those connect up to others. Otherwise, it's still going to be very much in silos. So I'm really curious about, I think what's arriving for me is we've always thought about the world as sort of the veins and arteries of change is what we want to create. What I feel like is arriving with you is the way of feeling within that network, the way of being, the way of a complete change of perspective, of sensing, of feeling how we are within that functional network, for example.
Yeah. And also you're making me think of the ecosystem function that dandelions play. To talk about propagation sounds like it's only these tiny little seeds and they spread one at a time, but there is a whole system level impact. I had a conversation with a farmer about how she needed a certain number of, can't remember the nut right now, but it's a certain nut bush so that they could serve their ecosystem function. So there is something about scale, even if the propagation happens in small circles, little by little, still the aggregation of them has a big impact. So I like your question, I like your comments here.
It's making me think of the acorn tree that has lots of acorns for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Right. And not all of them become trees, but they all contribute.
And I think when we talk about scale, what we're saying we don't want to have is a linear scale at the cost of all things. What? Yeah. Okay. I feel like I'd like to have a conversation with you connected to podcast about where we go from here, just to make sure, because it feels like we've cul-de-saced a bit, but maybe that's because I feel like I've removed myself from connection from you because I've not asked enough questions. So, I don't feel like you've cul-de-sac. I feel like I've cul-de-sac, and I'm going to cut this bit out.
I think we've gotten to a place where neither of us knows. So, we just want to go away and think a bit. You've gotten us to some good juicy stuff, but yeah, let's see where else we want to go.
Well, I feel like let's see where else we want to go, and I also feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't. It's not always good if I talk. Basically, I mean, it's fun to talk, but it's also really helpful to receive. But I think I don't feel like I know what are the right questions to ask you to receive the elements of your knowledge that you feel would be most useful to share.
Let me share one thing. One thing that came to mind as we were talking about the future, the vision of the future, and propagation and shifting the worldview, and what's needed. There's a real backlash also taking place. There's so much that's encouraging and positive, but it's clear that there's also a backlash that worldview of domination and extraction and colonization and patriarchy is not going down without a fight. And it's rooted in fear because it is a story of separation. So you are on your own and you have to compete and consume more than everybody else in order to survive. So the more that we can create lived experiences of a different reality, of a different version of reality, where we can be in trust in each other, trust in ourselves, and trust in life. I think that's my best strategy for countering this backlash. And I see organizations as having the greatest opportunity and responsibility to do that. So this is kind of a new mandate for leaders to create that practice ground for a more thrivable world, not just to get better and better at providing your product or service, but it's a microcosm of society. Organizations are the new commons. There's not really any place else where we can gather and be a healthy community together. So it's sort of the front lines in the fight against fascism, in my view, is our every project and our organization, but it's not a fight against it. It's an invitation into a whole different way of thinking, feeling, and being together. And we don't even have to talk about that, that's what's going on, but we just create that experience.
Yeah. That aligns with the conversation about being a purposeful organization, I sense, because otherwise, what are you doing there?
Right. And can you
can't
expand,
really, you don't, yeah.
Right. Can you expand and deepen that purpose to serve all of society, even in how you engage in conversation, how you care for each other and the rest of life?
Yeah. So the product becomes part of, or the service becomes only part of the story, only part of what's happening there. Actually, what we're doing is we're saying, well, if we're going to spend so much time together, most of our life together in this way, how do we choose that is? And okay, fine, let's make something at the same time. Or not okay, fine, but I think it becomes it's a different way of feeling, thinking, and being within an organization. Yeah, interesting. And what arrives to me when you share that is this sort of sense of trade and craft and craftsmanship. And there's perhaps something there to do with connection, and that we become disconnected from what we're making, and therefore greater connection creates a greater sense of meaning. And we had Philippe from Climate Farmer. I hope I've got that right, Philippe. Sorry if I've not got it right. Talking about regenerative agriculture in Europe, for example, and the role that farmers are playing, and the need for us to support farmers to play a valuable role in the ecosystem, not just to be producers of food. So there's a lines there in terms of like the connection between is fostering a deeper sense of connection through those value chains. And what you're sharing is to expand that to include an ecosystem connection or a nature perspective when we do that.
Right. Even if we're just having a meeting about product strategy or about a particular decision, can we bring a bit more care? Can we ask bigger, bolder questions? Can we see what more comes into view when we switch our language from mechanistic metaphors to organic metaphors? So instead of building the foundation, that's just from physics, what if we cultivate fertile soil for this project? Okay. Can we just like tiptoe our way into this new worldview? I mean, you can go more, you can do more than that, but it really can be subtle.
Well, I love that, because when you say building a foundation, inside me, I feel this square block. When you say, what was the other word? Say it again. I really enjoyed receiving it. What was
Cultivating fertile soil.
Yeah, I just feel really resonant and sort of warm, and yeah. Have you got any other similar examples that we can play with?
Let's see. Well, there's that shift from managing the tourist destination to cultivating the hosting community. Here's one that I'm still trying to find my way into. I notice how much we're drawn to journey metaphors. Like we just naturally go there. And I find it can leave us feeling that where we are now is not the right place. And what we have now is not what we need. So instead we have to leave all that behind and go off somewhere else. But so much of my work is grounded in place. So we actually want to stay right here, but cultivate the soil and the relationships and that deepening sense of being at home and in harmony with context. So in a forest or on a degraded landscape, there are phases of succession, it's called. So the first plants to come in are weeds, and they provide a service. They break up the soil and start to add nutrients and draw from the minerals that are in the rocks. And then come in the shrubs, and then the kind of bushes, and then trees, and then a whole diverse ecosystem is possible. But it had to start with the weeds. There's no other way. And so I'm so curious if we can explore alternatives to the hero's journey in particular, and instead be in that collective cultivation, more process oriented and more embracing the value of what we have and who we are now. There's a lot of richness. So that's one I'm playing with.
Yeah, because the hero's journey is solitary, isn't it, in some ways? But it's, oh my gosh, that's so difficult to unwind.
It is. I know. And I keep stumbling on it. So like yeah.
It's just, you can feel the layers of cultural, social within you. And then also the layers of educate. Like if you were to learn anything about marketing, it's like, yeah, hero's journey is one of the things, right?
Right.
So suddenly you like,
or the blueprint or the roadmap, of the learning journey. It's everywhere. Yeah. How do we get from here to there? What if here is exactly where we need to be? What else can we cultivate here and grow and invite?
Have you created this list of words, or is it just within you that you know, or is
I haven't created it, but you're making me want to, so I'm going to make a note.
I would love to that would be a really fun project. So we're I'd love to either support it, be part of it, whatever. That feels really exciting. Maybe we could do like a get a group of people to create. I mean, you might choose that you want to do it. That's totally okay. So it doesn't matter how they arrive. It feels fun for them to arrive. I think so. I'm so curious about what are those tools that we need, the tools that we can share. If we were Christianity, we'd have had a Bible. It'd have been really straightforward. People would just read the Bible, followed the structure. This new way requires a different. To create change, you require a number of different things, no matter where you are. And most of them are around communicating, or either learning, understanding, or communicating. There are other things as well, but that's a big component of that. And so one of the things that we have is people are like, oh, I feel myself always writing slide decks to communicate internally why we need to invest in nature or something. And so I'm very curious about building a toolkit. And what I love that you're arriving with is, hey, your toolkit needs to have good words in it. Like, let's think about the words in it. Let's think about
Yeah, I love it. I've got this set of 6 practices to help us move into thrivability. And one of them is the toolkit, So the first one is we have to embrace new perspectives. That's the new worldview. The second is see a new role for ourselves as stewards rather than mechanics and engineers. The third is embrace new methods. And new methods. I hadn't put words in there, but you're right. I think they belong as part of the toolkit. And then there are all of these wonderful methods of facilitation and being in conversation, like some of the ones you were describing, constellation work, and just good generative facilitation of conversation and decision making and information sharing. And then, and there's more. There's more in how we structure governance and our physical setting. There's lots in the toolkit. And those first 3, the worldview, the role, the new methods equip us to imagine new contributions. So that's where we see we can do more than just provide this product or service. Maybe we could have a healing effect on our community as well. Maybe that's the bigger purpose of our work. And from there, we start to imagine new signals. That's the fifth one. New ways of knowing that we are tending to enhance the integrity, beauty, and regenerative capacity, tending to support thrivability. And then the sixth one is new actions, new safe experiments. We have to kind of experiment our way into thrivability. And that's a spiral. It's not a line. This is something that we keep spiraling through and learning and deepening and celebrating as we go.
I mean, everyone should work with you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I genuinely, I think if you're doing a brand session or you're doing like a strategy session and you haven't incorporated it into it, then it's not working properly. I can't see a reason why this wouldn't be integral or fundamental to every decision. And even as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking it doesn't go enough. It doesn't go far enough to be within a reporting framework or to, I don't know, I'm avoiding saying any names of organizations, but they're good. They're very, very good. They're very good at helping you get so far and understanding what to do. But the shift that's now is behavior change. And we know that. And behavior change comes, I feel, from feeling and sense of purpose. And these are perhaps the wrong words, but what are we doing here? How are we doing it here? Why are we here? Like, it's a deeper question to ask, because I feel like what you're doing is saying, oh, here's a door. Like, let's have a look through this door. And this is the way that we feel like we would. Yeah, I love this.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And as much as there is a need for speed and scale, we also can start somewhere. And here's the journey metaphor again, or maybe we're starting somewhere with the ground that we're on. We're starting with some action, and we learn.
I like this. This is fun. When we talked to Fibs from South Asians for Sustainability. Again, another edge space, social environmental justice, where we're sort of figuring out which words fit and don't fit. And this is I love this space where we're like, even those of us, and I would only partially include myself in that, of us that are like pioneering these words and these concepts, we're also struggling with like, oh, but this conditioning, how do I
Right. That's it. See, I'm in it to learn for myself. I just appreciate everybody coming along to help me with that. So
well, you're the resonator. You're the person that's chosen that's important to you, and that you want to figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. And then
your
offer
heart
up
is in the right place.
Yeah. Right. What I'm noticing. Yeah.
What's a different word for distribution?
Dissemination? I don't know.
No, that's also sounds awful.
Yeah.
Propagation.
Yeah.
I liked your word of propagation.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would add to that list in perhaps intentional propagation. Well, I'm going to say distribution because it feels easier, because it feels like something I can understand right now, and it feels more straightforward to explain. But like, for example, what we're seeing now with really large influencers, predominantly in America, or mostly in America, where they build big channels on Instagram, big channels on TikTok, or they're in movies, or they have this influence. And then then at the moment, oh my God, why are you doing this? At the moment they choose to market a gin or a whiskey or, I don't know, something else, because they have this massive distribution. And you see these products, for example, like Mr. Beast Burger, just scale incredibly quickly. And as much as I love, and I truly love, and my heart center is with a world of thrivability and that way of feeling and thing, we're up against that. And so there's something about how we, like, for me, there's something about the distribution. Like, how do we, like this? And someone shared this morning our first episode of our podcast, and I thought very, very touched by it. But he was But Sam said, well, it's all of our ships rise together. And I think that's the bit that we're still grappling with as a movement, because we're not quite good enough at saying, oh, we're here, which everyone else that's in other types of movements, particularly the capitalist, what we might call a movement, is very much good at that, you know? So I wonder how to unlock that part of it as well.
I have to have faith based on what I'm seeing, that there is this growth in the number of people like you, like me, who are asking these questions and convening conversations. We're finding each other, finding courage to speak louder, to convene more people. And I think that draw to TikTok and Jin and all of those other things are filling a void. You know, there's a void because there isn't a commons. I was talking earlier about how organizations are the new commons, but they haven't really been serving that purpose to create a sense of community and meaning. So we're looking for it on TikTok and in sort of meaningless activities. But when people are invited into meaningful spaces of connection, there's such a resonance and such a healing. I have this blog post called Meetings as a Form of Healing, because I kept hearing people say, this felt healing, you know, and it was just a meeting. But done well, there's something that fills the void. And that's very attractive. That I have faith that the more that can be made available to people, the more they'll be drawn to it. There was one other thing I wanted to say. I wrote another piece called post-ecstatic stress disorder, kind of the counterpart to post-traumatic stress disorder. But when we have these really meaningful experiences together, it's so good in the moment. And then you leave and it's lonely and I feel tired and confused, you know, because I'm going back to the regular world where it's not filled with meaning and connection. So I feel bad, you know, and I want more of it. And the only solution is to create more of it. So I have a lot of faith in the power of those experiences. So the more we can create them, the more they'll spread. And it's so encouraging. There are so many more and more and more of us out there. I'm encouraged by how many more and more people there are like you and like me who are bringing people together in meaning, in purpose, in connection. And I have faith in the potential of that movement to transform the world.
I do too. I think it needs help though.
Yeah.
So I think there's a sort of sense of like, you know, so if you're in religion, if you're a Muslim, is it 4 times a day that you pray? I probably have this wrong. Not necessarily what's missing, but there's this sort of sense as to there's something there that needs to be created.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're saying in essence is there's a way of learning how to feel and be and to share and to communicate. And there's a way of practicing intentional connection and being in community and aware of our role in our world. And then there's also an importance to share that with others and share both that experience and also talk about that experience. I don't like the word normalize, but it feels like, you know, so it becomes, I don't even know if I like status quo, but so it becomes the norm. And that requires a lot more intention and conversation and connection than I think we're currently having. So, or that I feel we're currently having. So there's a missing piece there in it becoming a practice, or there's something there, isn't there, in terms of like, we're at a disadvantage against capitalism and religion there.
Right. It's true.
Should they read your book?
Yes. Also, on a really personal level, I've been at this for more than 20 years, and it was really lonely for the first 15. There were, either nobody that I knew, others were out there, but we weren't connected. And then there were just a few of us. And then in these past 3 years, suddenly it's exploded, and the algorithms help this along, but it looks like everybody is an expert in regeneration and life aligned ways of working. And I admit my first reaction was a little bit of panic, like, wait, what about me? Like, hold on. And then I really recently, somebody brought up the concept of an elder, and I'm in my 50s. So, I hadn't yet embraced the concept of being an elder in terms of age, but that really felt like home to me when I heard it, and I thought, this is a role I can play in this movement. I want all of these people. We all need as many people as possible telling this story. So maybe now my role shifts from trying to tell the message kind of one group at a time to supporting as many people as possible so that they can spread the message in their way. So that's kind of my answer to scaling. I'm in the process of reorienting myself to serve as an elder. Yeah.
That really resonates. We had the same with community. It was like our sort of special thing for a bit, and then suddenly it was like everyone had a community, and you're feeling both edgy and also excited at the same time.
Right. It's confusing.
Yeah, definitely resonates. It's going to take all of us, and we're all on the same team. So for me to feel like I knew how I was of service, and to trust that the path would arrive, or that as I kept walking forward, the right people would arrive, the right place would arrive. That has always felt very, very true. I feel the only difference between that happening and not happening is my ability to get up every day and keep figuring it out and keep moving forward. And so I love what you're sharing in terms of like receiving that information and then repositioning yourself or rethinking about what your role is in the world. And this idea of being a propagator of perhaps propagators, which feels extremely, interesting. Yeah. How would that work?
I'm not sure, but there's more emphasis on both teaching and creating immersive experiences, and those 6 practices and the toolkit kind of come together as an offering to those who would propagate. So less emphasis on those individual organizations as clients and more on bringing together communities of practice of propagators.
I'm in.
Okay, good.
100%.
Nice.
And that feels like a great point to wrap. Although I would also recommend everyone else to be in as well. And you, if you're listening and this feels like your calling, then you're in. I'm nominating you to be in. And we'll figure out how to make that happen.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, such a pleasure.
Yes.
A real pleasure. I'm never quite sure where these are going. And thank you for holding space while we refound the thread, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like I've received a completely different perspective on how to feel, think, and be. That's only just the start of a journey. So I hope that we can stay connected and keep exploring. And I would imagine that people that have been listening to this as well would feel the same. So I would urge them to search you out, read the book, find you, discover more. And would you like to share any closing words, or you feel if you feel done, that's also okay?
Yeah, it has been a real pleasure. I've loved our conversation. I've learned. I've felt inspired. So thank you. You're a delightful host.
That's nice. I love that you've said that, but I wonder. I feel awkward with that, but I wonder. Actually, I feel like the big action for me is that words thing. So I'm going to hold you to those words.
Okay.
And look forward to receiving them.
Thank you. This is the first time I'm saying them publicly. So good. Thank you.
Nice. Well, they're very well received.
Please like, rate, and share this widely on your social channels. The more people that we can welcome to join us on the journey and support the change makers we champion, the faster we can combat climate change, battle biodiversity loss, and co-create a future we can all love.
Where do we go next? What questions did this spark for you? Would you like to know more about a particular topic? Who shall we adventure to? What shall we ask them? Where shall we go? What shall we build? How shall we do this together? Do you have any questions or comments? Join the Future Planet community of action at futureplanet.love to sign in, sign up, and get involved. Together, we can.